The turkey was still warm. I know because I'd been up since 5 that morning, brining it, seasoning it, rotating the pan every 45 minutes. I'd driven the whole spread 25 minutes across Millfield in my Honda with the heat cranked so the mashed potatoes wouldn't go cold. I set the table with the good napkins, the cloth ones I'd bought Linda 3 Thanksgivings ago, the ones she only used when company came. I'd even folded them into little fans. Nobody asked me to. Nobody noticed. Dinner was halfway through when my mother looked across the table, set down her fork, and said it. "You're just a burden. Always have been." My brother Garrett laughed. Not an uncomfortable laugh. A real one. At least I make this family proud. My father looked at his plate. I set my fork down, folded my napkin, pushed back my chair, took my coat from the hook by the door, and I left. No argument. No tears. No slamming. Just the soft click of the front door behind me, but here's what none of them knew. I'd been paying for that roof over their heads for 8 years, and what happened in the weeks after that dinner would cost them everything. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. I'm Sloan, 32, a CPA from a small town in Pennsylvania. This is the story of how my family treated me like an ATM for 8 years, called me a burden at Thanksgiving dinner, and then discovered what happens when the ATM shuts off. If a story about standing up and walking away hits close to home, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I was 14 when I won the state math competition. First place. A gold-colored trophy with a little engraved plate that said my name and the year. I carried it home on the school bus, holding it in my lap the whole ride so it wouldn't rattle. When I walked through the front door, the kitchen smelled like pepperoni. My mother had ordered pizza, 4 large pies from Gino's, to celebrate Garrett making the JV football team. He was 17 and had finally cracked the roster as a backup safety. Linda stood at the counter slicing pizza onto paper plates, beaming. "Your brother works so hard. Not everyone can make a team, you know." I put my trophy on the counter next to the pizza boxes. Nobody looked at it. We ate dinner talking about Garrett's practice schedule, his coach, his new cleats that cost $120, which I later realized my father had put on a credit card he couldn't pay off. After dinner, I washed the dishes. The trophy sat on the counter for 3 days before I moved it to my room. The small one beside the laundry room, where the dryer hummed through the wall every night. Garrett's room was the biggest in the house. He had his own television and a lock on his door. I had a window that faced the side of the neighbor's garage. That same month, I heard Linda telling Mrs. Oates over the fence that Garrett was going to get an athletic scholarship to college. He didn't. He got cut from the team 3 months later after missing too many practices. I knew. I said nothing. I learned something at 14 that most people learn much later. Silence can be a weapon or a cage. I hadn't figured out which one yet. I went to Penn State on an academic scholarship that covered 70% of tuition. I worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. Morning shift at the campus bookstore, weekend shifts at a tax prep office in town. I ate a lot of peanut butter sandwiches. I graduated in 4 years with a degree in accounting and 0 debt. Garrett went to community college for 1 semester, declared it not for him, and moved back into my parents' basement to focus on his business. His business was selling custom-printed t-shirts online. It lasted 4 months. The website is still up technically. 0 orders since 2017. When I was 24, 2 years out of college, working at my first real accounting job, I got a call from Linda. Frank, my father, had torn 3 ligaments in his lower back on a construction site. Workers' comp covered the surgery. It didn't cover everything else. "We need help with the bills, Sloan." I was making $36,000 a year at my first accounting job. I started sending $800 a month. That was more than a quarter of my take-home pay. I ate ramen 5 nights a week. I skipped lunch most days. I bought my work clothes at Goodwill and hemmed them myself. When I asked if Garrett was contributing anything, Linda's voice went flat. "Your brother is building something. You just have a job." That was the first check. I wrote it out at my kitchen table in my studio apartment, the one with the radiator that clanked at 2 in the morning. Signed my name, sealed the envelope, and walked it to the mailbox on the corner. Over the next 8 years, I would send 312 more. 8 years is a long time to be someone's balance sheet. By year 3, I'd been promoted to senior accountant at Harper & Webb, a small firm in downtown Millfield. By year 5, I'd earned my CPA license, studied for it at night after full days of other people's taxes passed on the first attempt. By year 8, my salary had climbed to $58,000, and I'd built a side business doing freelance bookkeeping that brought in another $15,000 a year. On paper, I was doing well. In reality, every month I wrote the same checks: $1,200 for the mortgage, $340 for Frank's health insurance supplement, $180 for utilities. Twice a year, property tax. Over 8 years, that added up to roughly $186,000. I know the exact number because I'm an accountant. I tracked it. Meanwhile, Garrett's resume looked like a graveyard of enthusiasm. Startup number 1, custom t-shirts, dead in 4 months. Startup number 2, cryptocurrency trading, which lost $8,000 of Linda's savings. Startup number 3, a food truck concept that never made it past a mood board on his basement wall. His financial contribution to the family over 8 years was 0. Not reduced. Not minimal. 0. But Linda's narrative never changed. Garrett is going to make it big. Sloan just pushes numbers. That December, I stopped at the post office to mail a client's tax extension. On the counter by the stamp machine, someone had left a stack of Christmas cards. The top one was familiar. The Juergens family photo. 3 people. My mother, my father, my brother, smiling in front of the fireplace I'd paid to keep running. I was a sponsor, not a member. The church potluck was in October, about a month before Thanksgiving. Linda had volunteered me to bring 2 pies, apple and pecan, without asking. I made them anyway. When I walked into the fellowship hall, Linda was already holding court near the coffee station, one hand on Garrett's shoulder like she was presenting a prize stallion at the county fair. "Pastor Whelan, have you met my son? He's an entrepreneur, working on something really exciting." Garrett produced a business card from his back pocket, glossy, embossed, for a company called Garrett Juergens Enterprises. His 4th venture, buying cheap rural lots and flipping them. He didn't mention he had no capital, no lots, and no plan beyond a YouTube video he'd watched about real estate. Pastor Whelan nodded politely. Someone near the dessert table, I think it was Mrs. Danner, asked, "And what about your daughter? Sloan, right?" Linda barely turned her head. "Oh, Sloan. She does bookkeeping. She's fine." She said fine, the way you'd describe the weather on a day no one remembers. I stood next to the salad table with my 2 pies and a paper plate I hadn't filled. I set the pies down, picked up my purse, walked to the parking lot. No one noticed I left. On the drive home, I stopped at the Wawa on Route 30 and bought a medium coffee. Black, 2 sugars. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 40 minutes. I wasn't crying. I wasn't planning. I was doing something I'd done my whole life without naming it, recalculating. Every few years, an accountant has to look at the books and ask whether a long-term liability is still worth carrying. I was starting to wonder. Thanksgiving morning. 5 a.m., I stood in my apartment kitchen with a 20-pound turkey I'd brined overnight in a 5-gallon bucket. I prepped everything from scratch: mashed potatoes with real butter, green bean casserole with fresh mushrooms, cranberry sauce I'd boiled from whole berries, because Linda once said the canned kind looked like jelly from a hospital. By 11, my car smelled like a restaurant. I drove 25 minutes to 814 Maple Drive, carried 6 containers up the porch steps in 3 trips, and let myself in with the key I'd had since college. The house was quiet. Frank was in his recliner with the heating pad on his back, watching football on mute. Linda was getting dressed. Garrett was still asleep in the basement. I set the table, wiped down the counters, adjusted the thermostat. I could do that, since I paid the electric bill. I unfolded the cloth napkins and arranged them beside each plate. I checked the oven temperature twice. At 2 in the afternoon, Garrett came upstairs in a hoodie and sweatpants, hair uncombed, and dropped into a chair. "When's dinner?" Linda appeared behind him and put a hand on his shoulder. "Garrett, honey, sit down. You must be tired." He'd been asleep until 90 seconds ago. I watched him settle into the chair I had just wiped clean. Nobody said thank you. Nobody asked if I needed help. Nobody said anything to me at all. In accounting, there's a term for when two numbers should match but don't. Unreconciled. The debit and credit are both on the books, but something is off, and until you find it, the whole ledger is wrong. Standing in that kitchen, holding a serving spoon, watching my family gather around a meal I had cooked and paid for, I understood the word for the first time as something other than professional. Linda raised her glass of boxed wine. "I want to say how thankful I am for my Garrett, always making this family proud." Garrett dipped his head in a practiced show of modesty. "Thanks, Mom. I've actually been working on something big. Got my eye on a few lots out past Route 9. Real estate is where the smart money is." He said this while eating turkey I'd roasted and sitting in a house whose mortgage I paid. Frank chewed quietly, eyes on his plate. Linda turned to me. "And you, Sloan? What do you have to be thankful for?" I opened my mouth. "I'm thankful for... You're just a burden, always have been." She said it the way she'd say the mashed potatoes need more salt. Matter of fact, like it was something everybody knew but nobody usually bothered to say out loud. Garrett laughed. Not a nervous, cover-your-mouth kind of laugh. A real laugh. An agreeing laugh. "At least I make this family proud." Frank set down his fork. He didn't look up. He didn't say a word. He just stopped chewing. I looked at the napkin in my lap. The one I'd folded into a fan 2 hours ago. I set my fork down. Left. Not right. The way you do when you're done and not coming back. I folded the napkin once, set it beside my plate, pushed my chair back, stood up, walked to the front door, took my coat from the hook, the gray wool one I'd found at the Goodwill in Lancaster for $12. "Where are you going?" Linda's voice was more annoyed than concerned. "Dinner isn't over." I didn't answer. I stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind me, and walked to my car. The engine turned over on the first try. I backed out of the driveway past Frank's old work truck with the flat tire nobody had fixed. I drove 25 minutes home in total silence. No radio, no phone, no tears. Just the road, and the dark, and the sound of the heater. That was the last Thanksgiving I would ever spend in that house. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I sat on my couch and opened my banking app. I had 3 scheduled payments set up years ago. $1,200 for the mortgage on the 1st of every month, $340 for Frank's supplemental health insurance on the 15th, and $180 for the electric and gas. 3 automatic transfers, 3 taps to cancel. I pressed the first one. Confirm? Yes. Second one. Confirm? Yes. Third. Yes. It took less than a minute. 8 years of financial obligation, ended with 3 taps and a thumb. I closed the app and set my phone on the coffee table. For the first time in years, my checking account was going to stay where it was at the end of the month. On the 12th day, my phone rang. Dad. "Sloan, the mortgage? The bank sent a letter. It says the payment is late. There's a penalty." His voice had that careful tone, the one he used when he knew he was standing on Linda's land and didn't want to trip a wire. "Why is the mortgage unpaid?" "Ask your pride and joy." Silence. I could hear the television in the background, some game show with bells. "Sloan, you can't just..." "I can. And I am." I hung up, laid back on my couch and stared at the ceiling. My apartment was small, 410 square feet, if you counted the bathroom. But it was mine. The lease had my name on it. The electricity was in my name. The Wi-Fi, the renter's insurance, the doormat that said welcome. All mine. I'd paid for everything in this room with money I'd earned. And for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't going to send a single dollar to a house where my name didn't even make the Christmas card. 8 years. 312 checks. Not once did anyone in my family say thank you, And when I finally stopped, the first call wasn't to ask if I was okay. It was to ask about the mortgage. If you've ever been the one holding everything together while everyone else took the credit, you know exactly what that silence on the phone felt like. Stay with me, because what I found next changed everything. Linda's counterattack started 3 days later. She didn't call me. She called everyone else. Aunt Carol in Allentown, Cousin Beth in Scranton, Mrs. Danner from church, Pastor Whelan's wife, the cashier at the IGA who'd known our family for 20 years. The narrative was clean, rehearsed, and devastating. Sloan abandoned her family. Her father is disabled. Her mother has no income. And Sloan just cut them off. No context. No mention of 8 years of checks. No mention of the word burden at Thanksgiving dinner. Just the story Linda wanted told. My phone lit up with voicemails. 4 a day, sometimes 5. You're killing your father. The church is praying for us. How can you do this to your own mother? I listened to each one exactly once. I opened a spreadsheet. Columns for date, caller, timestamp, summary, emotional register. I logged each message the way I'd log a transaction, factual, without commentary. Then I deleted the voicemail. I didn't call anyone back. On the 5th day, Garrett called. First time in 3 years. His voice was tight, like someone holding a phone and a grudge at the same time. You need to come home and fix this. Fix what? Everything. Mom is losing it. Dad can't sleep. The bank is calling. Sounds like a family problem, Garrett. You are family. Am I? Because at Thanksgiving, Mom said I was a burden. You laughed. Dad said nothing. That doesn't sound like family to me. He hung up. I added his call to the spreadsheet. December 14th, 11:47 a.m., duration 2 minutes, tone aggressive, content demanding. Every quarter, I pulled my credit report. It wasn't paranoia. It was professional habit. When you're a CPA, your credit score is part of your credential. Clients trust you with their books. Lenders trust your number. I checked mine the second week of January. Equifax loaded on my laptop screen in my apartment. I scrolled past the usual. Student loan paid off, car loan paid off, credit card utilization at 9%. And then I stopped. A new account, a mortgage, $47,000, secured by residential property at 814 Maple Drive, Millfield, Pennsylvania. Opened 4 months ago. My name was on it. Sloan A. Juergens. I hadn't signed a mortgage in my life. I hadn't agreed to a loan. I hadn't walked into a bank or spoken to a loan officer or sat across from a notary. But there it was. My name, my social security number, my credit history, tethered to a second mortgage on a house I didn't own for a loan I never requested. My credit score had dropped 38 points. I sat back. My hands were steady. I'm an accountant. Numbers don't panic me, even when they're wrong. Especially when they're wrong. I took a screenshot, downloaded the full report as a PDF, opened a new folder on my desktop and named it 814 Maple. I saved the file, opened a fresh spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, source. Column C, finding. Column D, action taken. I typed the first entry, January 12th, Equifax credit report, unauthorized mortgage, $47,000, 814 Maple Drive, screenshot saved, PDF archived. Someone had used my name, my signature, my credit, and there was only one address that loan was tied to. I called Valley First Credit Union the next morning. The loan officer, a woman named Janet, was polite and careful. Ms. Juergens, I can pull the application for you, but I'll need to verify your identity first. I gave her everything: social security number, date of birth, mother's maiden name. She confirmed I was who I said I was. The application was submitted in person, Janet said, notarized by a local notary. I'll send you a copy by mail, 5 to 7 business days. I said that would be fine. 5 days later, a manila envelope arrived. I spread the documents across my kitchen table, turned on the reading lamp I used for freelance work, and went through every page. The application was thorough. Someone who knew me well had filled it out. My employer, my income, my address. Except the address listed was 814 Maple Drive, not my apartment. The signature was on page 11. At first glance, it was close. Very close. But I'm the person who signs my own name 100 times a month on tax returns and client letters. I know my handwriting the way a carpenter knows the grain of a particular wood. The S in Sloan looped to the right. Mine loops left. Always has. Below the signature, a notary stamp. Darren Holt, Notary Public, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Darren Holt. I knew that name. He'd been in Garrett's class at Millfield High. They'd played on the same JV football team, the one Garrett got cut from. Darren had a notary office on Main Street next to the hardware store. I set the document down, picked up my phone and called Rita Oakes, my boss. Rita, I need a lawyer. Not a tax lawyer, a criminal one. Rita was quiet for a moment, then. This is about your family, isn't it? It's about a forged signature on a $47,000 loan. I'll make a call tonight. Alan Marsh had an office in Lancaster, 35 minutes east. He was in his 50s, gray at the temples, with a desk covered in legal pads and a mug that said, "Due process." Rita had known him for 15 years. I sat across from him with the mortgage application, the credit report, and my own CPA license, the one with my real signature, laid side by side. He studied them for 10 minutes without speaking. Then he leaned back. Clean case. Forgery, identity theft, bank fraud. If you want to press charges, this is federal territory. What about the loan itself? You file an identity theft report with the FTC, dispute the account with all 3 credit bureaus, and the bank opens an investigation. The loan gets flagged. 60 to 90 days for resolution. And the house? He paused. If the second mortgage was fraudulent, the bank unwinds it. But if the first mortgage also defaults, the one you were paying, then the property enters foreclosure. It will default. I stopped paying. Alan looked at me, not with judgment, with the expression of a man who understood arithmetic. Then the house will go to auction, probably within 6 months. I nodded. That afternoon, I filed an identity theft report with the FTC from my apartment laptop. I placed a credit freeze with all 3 bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I drafted a dispute letter, printed it, signed it with my real signature, and mailed it certified to Valley First Credit Union. Then I made dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and sat on my couch and ate it in silence. 60 to 90 days. I could wait. I'd been waiting 32 years. Alan's investigation moved faster than I expected. Valley First cooperated. They had their own liability to worry about, and a forged notarization was a problem for them too. Within 3 weeks, the bank traced the $47,000. It had been wired from the loan account to a business checking account at a different bank. Registered to G&H Ventures LLC. G for Garrett, H for Holt, Darren Holt, the notary, partners. Alan sent me the disbursement records. I read them at my kitchen table the way I read all financial documents, slowly, with a pencil and a yellow legal pad. $18,000 went to a down payment on a vacant lot in rural Berks County. A parcel that had since dropped 40% in value due to a failed rezoning application. $22,000 went to a Ford F-150 pickup, registered to Garrett, described in the LLC records as a company vehicle. The remaining $7,000 was categorized as operating expenses. Alan got the bank statements for those operating expenses. 2 trips to Las Vegas, airfare and hotel. 6 dinners at restaurants in Philadelphia, none under $100. A gaming console and 3 controllers. A monthly subscription to a cigar club. My brother had stolen $47,000 using my name and spent it on land that was worthless, a truck he drove to the gas station, and vacations I'd never take. I didn't slam the table. I didn't cry. I picked up my pencil and added each line item to my spreadsheet. Column A, item. Column B, amount. Column C, Source. Column D. Status. When I finished, I closed my laptop and washed my coffee mug. My brother had taken everything he could carry using my name, and my mother still called him the pride of the family. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table with the mortgage application spread flat under the reading lamp. I placed my CPA license beside it. 2 signatures, 2 versions of my name, written by 2 different hands. The one on my license was mine. Clean, practiced, the S looping to the left the way it had since I learned cursive in 3rd grade from Mrs. Patterson at Millfield Elementary. The one on the mortgage was Garrett's attempt. The letters were shaped right. The spacing was close, but the S looped to the right. It was the kind of mistake you'd make if you'd seen the signature 100 times, but never understood the hand that wrote it. I thought about all 312 checks I'd mailed over 8 years. Each one had my real signature, written voluntarily, without thanks, without acknowledgement. Nobody in my family ever studied those signatures. Nobody held one up to the light. Nobody framed one or kept one. They cashed them and forgot. But this forgery, was the first time my signature had ever mattered to them. Not the real ones. Not the ones that kept the lights on and the roof patched and Frank's insurance active. The fake one. The one that unlocked $47,000 for a truck in Vegas. That was the signature they needed. I stared at the 2 names under the lamplight for a long time. A burden who could sign for $47,000. I folded the application back into its envelope, placed it in the 814 maple folder, and put the folder in my desk drawer. Then I turned off the lamp, brushed my teeth, and went to bed. I didn't dream. I rarely do. But I woke up at 5:15 the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not sadness. Arithmetic. Rita and I sat in a booth at Calhoun's Diner on Main Street. She had a club sandwich. I had coffee and a bowl of chicken noodle soup. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to let the system work. The FTC report is filed. The credit bureaus are investigating. Alan is handling the bank. And I'm done." Done with what? All of it. The checks, the holidays, the phone calls, the spreadsheet of voicemails from people who think I owe my parents my entire adult life. I ticked it off. Auto payments canceled since Thanksgiving. Credit freeze in place. FTC report filed. Apartment locks changed. Not because I thought Garrett would show up, but because the old lock was the one Frank had installed when I first moved in, and I didn't want anything in my life that my family had touched. The voicemails I kept routing to a folder, not to torture myself, but because each one was documentation, pattern, evidence, if I ever needed it. Rita stirred her iced tea. And the house? The house is going to default. Then it's going to auction. And then? I looked at her. She looked at me. Rita is 54 years old. She built Harper & Webb from a folding table in her garage. She understood what it meant to build something out of nothing while people watched and waited for you to fail. My mother was right about one thing, I said. I was a burden, just not the kind she meant. I was the burden holding everything up, and I put it down. Rita nodded slowly. She didn't say, "Good for you," or "I'm proud of you." She said, "Finish your soup. We have 3 new clients this week." I sat in that diner booth with my boss and said the word "done" out loud for the first time. Not angry, not dramatic, just done. And here's the thing about being done. It doesn't feel like freedom right away. It feels like free falling. But you learn fast that you're not falling. You've just stopped carrying everyone else. If that word means something to you right now, keep watching. My phone rang at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. I almost let it go. But it was Frank, and Frank never called late unless Linda was asleep. Sloan. His voice was low. Basement of the house low. Or maybe he'd stepped out to the porch. I could hear wind. "I know you're angry. I know why." I said nothing. I should have said something at that table. I should have said something a long time ago. Still nothing from me. The silence was his to fill, not mine. Your mother. She had a hard life after you were born. She gave up her job at the equipment dealership. She was the best salesperson in the county, and she walked away from it because we couldn't afford daycare for two. She never got over it. That's her story, Dad. Not mine. I know. Another pause. Longer this time. The wind picked up on his end. He was outside. I know you deserved better than tonight. Better than all of it. I waited. But you can't let the house go, Sloan. It's all we have. There it was. The ask. The only reason for the call. Not to apologize. Not really. To acknowledge just enough to keep the money flowing. He'd said the right words, but they were in service of the wrong request. Good night, Dad. Sloan. Good night. I hung up, set the phone face down on the nightstand, pulled the blanket up, stared at the ceiling. Just before he'd spoken, in the half-second between I know and but, I'd heard something I'd never heard from him before. It might have been regret. It might have been the wind. Right before the call ended, just barely audible, "Don't tell your mother I called." He loved me. I believe that. But he loved his quiet more. 60 days after Thanksgiving, Valley First Credit Union sent a notice of default to 814 Maple Drive. 90 days to cure or the bank would begin foreclosure proceedings. I know because Linda told me, not directly, but through the 11 voicemails she left in a single day. The progression was textbook. 9 a.m. Sloan, please call me back. We got a letter from the bank. 10:15. This is serious. Your father is very upset. 11:30. You're destroying this family. 1 p.m. God will judge you for this, Sloan. He sees everything. 3:45. Voice cracking. I wish I never had you. I listened. I logged. I deleted. Same spreadsheet, same columns, same flat effect. Date. February 2nd. Caller. Linda Juergens. Messages. 11. Emotional arc. Pleading to accusatory to theological to raw. But there was another call that day that caught my attention. Garrett. His voice was different. Not angry. Not demanding. Shaking. Hey, about that second loan on the house. The one from Valley First. We should probably talk about that. I understood the tremor in his voice immediately. Garrett wasn't afraid of losing the house. He was afraid of what the bank would find when they started investigating the second mortgage, the one with my forged signature. If the bank investigated, they'd find the forgery. If they found the forgery, they'd find Darren Holt's fraudulent notarization. If they found Darren, they'd find G&H Ventures. And if they found G&H Ventures, they'd find where the $47,000 went. Vegas. A truck. A gaming console. Talk to your lawyer, Garrett. I hung up. He didn't call again for 6 weeks. January turned into February, and something strange happened. My life got quiet. Not empty. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you stop carrying a weight so familiar you forgot it was there. Without $1,720 a month going to a house I didn't live in, my checking account did something it had never done. It grew. I opened an investment account. A simple Vanguard index fund, nothing fancy. I bought a real sofa to replace the Goodwill one I'd had since my first apartment, the one with the spring that poked through the left cushion. I signed up for a yoga class at the community center in Lancaster. Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I'd never done yoga. Turns out, I liked it. Rita gave me the lead on 3 new bookkeeping clients, all small businesses in the area. My freelance income jumped by $22,000 a year. And I did something I'd been thinking about for months. I registered an LLC with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Juergens and Associates Consulting. $125 for the filing fee. When the certificate of formation arrived in the mail, I put it in a frame and hung it on the wall above my desk. It was the first document with my name on it that I was proud to display. My first family portrait, in a way. Meanwhile, 25 minutes west, 814 Maple Drive was showing its seams. The grass grew tall because Frank couldn't push the mower with his back, and Garrett said he was too busy with his business. the business that existed only as an LLC with a depleted bank account. The utility company cut service for a week before Frank paid the bill himself from his disability check. The porch light went dark. The flag holder by the front door lost a screw and hung sideways. Nobody fixed it. Pauline Oates found me at the Wawa on a Saturday morning in late February. I was buying coffee and a banana, my usual pre-grocery run fuel. She was 72, 5 feet tall, and had lived next door to the Juergens house for 31 years. She'd watched me grow up. "Honey," she put her hand on my arm near the creamer station. "Your mother has been telling people you abandoned them, that you just stopped caring." I stirred my coffee. I heard. "But I've seen you, Sloan, every Saturday morning for years, pulling into that driveway with grocery bags. I saw you mowing that lawn in July when it was 95 degrees and your father couldn't stand up straight. I saw you carry that turkey up those porch steps every Thanksgiving since you were 23. I know what you did for that family." She squeezed my arm. "And I know what they did to you." I didn't respond right away. Not because I was emotional, because I was recalculating. Pauline Oates wasn't the only one who'd noticed. Word was spreading, not because I was telling anyone. I hadn't said a thing to anyone outside of Rita and Alan, but because Millfield is 4,000 people, and memories run long. People connected dots. The girl who brought pies to every potluck, who donated to every bake sale, who paid the church's lawn service bill anonymously for 3 years. That girl didn't just abandon her family. Pastor Whelan called Linda the following Sunday. "Is there something you're not telling us about Sloan?" "Linda, she's selfish." "Pastor, the girl who donated to every church bake sale for a decade?" Silence. Meanwhile, Darren Holt received a certified letter from the Pennsylvania Department of State. His notary commission was under review. The FTC report had triggered a bank investigation, and the bank had flagged the notarization. Darren called Garrett that afternoon. "I'm done covering for you. Figure it out yourself." In late March, Valley First Credit Union filed a notice of trustees sale with the county recorder. Foreclosure auction in 30 days. The letter arrived at 814 Maple Drive on a Wednesday. Linda read it standing at the kitchen counter, then set it on the table without a word. Frank told me later, months later, that she sat in the same chair for 2 hours without moving. The house. 4 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, built in 1987. The year Frank and Linda got married. The kitchen where Linda used to make Garrett's birthday cakes. Always chocolate, always with his name in blue frosting. The living room where the Christmas photo was taken every year. 3 people. Never 4. Market value, roughly $180,000. Outstanding first mortgage, $94,000. Outstanding second mortgage, Garrett's fraud, $47,000. The math was bad and getting worse. Linda called me one final time. No yelling, no scripture, no accusations. Just a voice I'd never heard from her before. Flat, small, emptied out. "Please. I can't help you, Mom." "You mean you won't?" "I mean I can't. You made sure of that at Thanksgiving." She was quiet for a long time. I could hear the kitchen clock in the background, the one shaped like a rooster that had hung on the wall since I was 6. "You'll regret this," she said. But her voice had no force behind it. She was saying it because she had nothing else left to say. I hung up, set my phone on the kitchen counter, looked at the framed LLC certificate on my wall. Juergens and Associates Consulting. I had 30 days. I met Alan Marsh at his office in Lancaster on a Thursday afternoon. "The foreclosure auction," I said. "Who can bid?" "Anyone. Individuals, LLCs, corporations, cash or certified funds. It's a public auction." "Can my LLC bid?" He set down his pen. "Juergens and Associates Consulting?" "Yes." He studied me for a moment. "Legally, there's no prohibition. The LLC is a separate entity. It has its own EIN, its own bank account, its own operating agreement. The fact that you share a surname with the former owners isn't a disqualifying factor." "What's the minimum bid likely to be?" He pulled up comparable sales on his computer. Foreclosure properties in rural Pennsylvania were selling at 60 to 70 cents on the dollar. You're looking at 110 to 125,000. I opened my laptop on his desk and showed him my accounts. Personal savings, $89,000. 8 years of living small and investing steady. LLC business account, $45,000. Freelance income I'd been funneling into the company since I registered it. Rita had offered to advance my year-end bonus, $8,000. Total liquid assets, $142,000. Alan looked at the numbers, looked at me. You can do this. I know, I've been doing the math since Thanksgiving. He leaned back. When you buy that house, if you buy it, what are you going to do with it? Something my mother never did. What's that? Make it a place where people feel welcome. He picked up his pen again. I'll register the LLC as a bidder. You'll need a cashier's check day of. I'll have it. We shook hands. It was the most professional handshake of my life, and the most personal. Garrett showed up at my apartment on a Sunday evening. No call, no text. Just a fist banging on my door hard enough to rattle the chain lock. I opened it with the chain still on. Through the 3-inch gap I could see his face. Unshaved, red-eyed, wearing the same hoodie he'd worn at Thanksgiving. You need to drop the FTC report. No greeting, no lead-in, just the demand. If they investigate, I'm going to jail, Sloan. You committed identity theft and bank fraud. Those are federal charges, Garrett. That's not my problem. I'm your brother. You're a stranger who happens to share my parents. He shifted his weight, tried a different angle. The way he always did, pivot, redirect, charm. It used to work on Linda. It had never worked on me. I'll pay you back. Every cent. I just need time. With what? Your food truck that never launched? Your crypto portfolio? The lot in Berks County that lost 40% of its value? His jaw tightened. The charm evaporated. What was underneath was the same thing that had always been underneath. A man who believed he was owed something he hadn't earned. If you don't drop this, he said, voice low, I'll tell everyone you're the reason Mom and Dad are losing the house. They already think that. Mom's been telling that story for weeks. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing useful came out. I looked at him through the chain gap. My brother. 3 years older, 3 inches taller, and a lifetime behind me in every way that counted. Good night, Garrett. I closed the door, turned the deadbolt, fastened the chain, walked back to my couch, sat down, and picked up the book I'd been reading, a used copy of a financial planning guide I'd found at the library sale. Behind me, I could hear him standing in the hallway for another 30 seconds before his footsteps faded toward the stairwell. I'd switched to the 8 a.m. Sunday service at church to avoid my family. Linda attended at 10. I thought that was enough distance. It wasn't. The first Sunday in April, I walked into the sanctuary at 7:55 and found Linda sitting in the third pew with 2 church elders, Harold Gregg and Martha Benton. They were waiting for me. Sloan. Harold stood up. He was 70, retired teacher, kind eyes, completely out of his depth. We've asked your mother here because we believe in family reconciliation. The Bible says, honor thy father and mother. I finished for him. I know the verse. Linda sat with her hands folded, chin lifted, the posture of a woman who believed she'd assembled the perfect jury. The Bible also says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Ephesians 6:4. I set my purse on the pew. And I believe, it also says, thou shalt not steal. My brother forged my signature on a federal document, a $47,000 mortgage. He used my social security number, my credit, and a notary friend to take out a loan in my name without my knowledge or consent. Did Mom mention that part? Silence. Harold looked at Linda. Martha looked at Linda. Linda's face went from composed to crimson in less than 2 seconds. That's a lie. I opened my phone. I had the mortgage application saved as a PDF, the forged signature beside my real one. I held it up. This is my signature. I swiped. This is not. The letters are close, but the S loops the wrong way. The FTC has been notified. The bank has confirmed the forgery. Linda stood up so fast the hymnal fell off the pew. She grabbed her purse and walked out the side door. Harold called after her. She didn't stop. Martha turned to me. I'm sorry, Sloan. I put my phone away. It's not your fault. After the service, Harold called me from the parking lot. I believe you. And I'm sorry we didn't ask more questions before today. 2 weeks to the auction. I sat at my desk at Harper & Webb and ran my checklist one final time. Item 1. Cashier's check from Valley First, payable to the county clerk, amount $118,000. I'd calculated 65% of market value plus a 5% cushion. The check was in my desk drawer at home, inside a manila envelope, inside a fireproof lockbox I'd bought at the office supply store. Item 2. LLC registration confirmed, operating agreement signed, EIN on file. Juergens and Associates Consulting was a real company, not a business card in a back pocket, but a legal entity with its own bank account, its own tax ID, and its own future. Item 3. Alan Marsh registered as bidder representative. He would hold paddle number 14. I would stand behind him. Rita knew the plan. She'd been the first person I told, over coffee in her office with the glass door closed. Are you sure? She asked. When have you known me to be unsure about a number, Rita? She'd laughed. Not the polite kind, the real kind. When you buy that house, what are you going to do with it? Something my mother never did. You said that before. What does it mean? It means I'm going to make it a place where people feel welcome. That evening, I went home and did one more thing. I packed a box, not large, just a file storage box from Staples. Inside, old tax returns, canceled checks, every bank statement from 8 years of payments, printouts of the credit report, the mortgage application, the FTC filing. I sealed the box, wrote evidence on the label with a marker and put it in my closet. Not to use, just to have. Just to know that every number was accounted for. The night before the auction, my phone rang at 10:22. Frank. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. They're selling our house tomorrow. His voice was stripped down. No careful tone, no diplomatic cushion. Just a man losing the only thing left. I know, Dad. 39 years in that house. Your mother and I brought Garrett home from the hospital to that house. Brought you home to that house. He paused. Fixed the porch railing twice. Replaced the water heater in 2011. Planted that maple in the front yard when your mother said the street looked bare. He was listing. The way people do when they're trying to hold something together by naming its parts. Is there anything you can do? There's nothing I'm willing to do. He heard the difference. I know he did because he went quiet for 7 seconds. I counted. I understand. Then. I'm sorry I never stood up for you. I wanted to. Every single time. I know, Dad. You just didn't. Yeah. More silence. The kind that sits between two people who have run out of ways to disappoint each other. Your mother is sitting in the living room right now. Won't turn on the lights. She's been there since 5 o'clock. I closed my eyes. Not from sympathy. From recognition. I knew what it felt like to sit in the dark in that house. Good night, Dad. Good night, Sloan. I set the phone down. Set my alarm for 6. Took my navy blazer out of the closet, the one I'd bought for my CPA licensing ceremony at the Harrisburg Convention Center. I'd invited all 3 of them. None of them came. Linda said she had a headache. Frank said he couldn't sit that long. Garrett didn't respond to the text. I ironed the blazer slowly, pressing each crease flat. Tomorrow wasn't about revenge. It was about accounting. And I was very, very good at accounting. The county courthouse steps were cold at 9 in the morning, late April, but the air still had that Pennsylvania bite. 38 degrees, gray sky, the kind of morning where your breath makes small clouds that disappear before you can finish a sentence. I arrived at 8:45, navy blazer, hair tied back, manila envelope under my arm. Alan Marsh walked beside me in a charcoal suit, carrying his briefcase and bitter paddle number 14. We didn't talk. We'd said everything at his office. I scanned the crowd. 15, maybe 20 people gathered on the courthouse steps and sidewalk. A few investors in fleece vests with clipboards. 2 neighbors I recognized. Mrs. Pauline Oates stood near the flagpole, bundled in a green wool coat, and gave me a small nod. Pastor Whelan was there too, standing at the edge of the crowd with his hands in his pockets. And then I saw them. Frank leaned against the iron railing, one hand on the rail, the other pressed against his lower back. He was wearing his old work jacket, the canvas one with the torn pocket he'd never mended. Linda stood beside him in the burgundy wool coat I'd bought her 3 Christmases ago. Her hair was done, her lipstick was on. Even at the end, she dressed for the public. Garrett hung back near the parking meters, arms crossed, hood up, not making eye contact with anyone. The auctioneer, a county clerk named Wes Pratt, set up a small podium at the top of the steps. He shuffled papers, adjusted a microphone nobody needed, and cleared his throat. Good morning. We are here for the public auction of Lot 47, residential property located at 814 Maple Drive, Millfield, Dauphin County. Opening bid, $95,000. I breathed. Alan lifted paddle number 14. An investor in the front row, khaki pants, North Face vest, raised his hand. 95. A woman behind him. 98. The man countered. 101. Alan lifted our paddle. 105. Steady voice. No urgency. Like he was ordering lunch. The woman dropped out at 108. The man in the vest pushed back. 110. 112. Alan. 114. The man checked his phone, typed something, looked up. 114.5. I touched Alan's arm, a prearranged signal. Go. 118,000. Alan's voice carried clean across the courthouse steps. The man in the vest looked at his phone again, shook his head, slid the phone into his pocket. Going once at $118,000. The auctioneer's voice was flat, procedural. This was Tuesday for him. Going twice. Silence. No other paddles. Sold. To bidder number 14. Juergens and Associates Consulting LLC. Linda's head snapped up. The name hit her the way certain words do. Not the meaning at first. Just the sound. Juergens. She scanned the crowd. Garrett stepped off the curb, arms unfolding. What? Who? Frank didn't move. He stood at the railing, staring at the courthouse steps like he was reading something written in the concrete. The auctioneer continued. Bidder 14, please approach with payment and identification for processing. Alan stepped forward, briefcase in hand. Linda pushed through 2 people to reach the podium area. Who is that? Who bought our house? Alan turned, professional, composed. My client, the owner of Juergens and Associates Consulting. Linda's voice pitched higher. Juergens? That's our name. Who? And then I stepped forward. From behind Alan, into the space between my lawyer and my mother. Navy blazer, hair tied back, manila envelope in my left hand. Hello, Mom. Linda stared at me. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. The burgundy coat I'd bought her seemed to tighten across her shoulders, or maybe she was just pulling herself inward. You bought our house? Juergens and Associates Consulting purchased this property at a public foreclosure auction, legally, with documented funds that I earned over the course of 8 years. I held up the manila envelope. Every payment verified, every dollar accounted for. I'm an accountant, Mom. It's what I do. Garrett shoved past 2 people and planted himself 3 feet from me. You can't do this. That's our home. You can't buy someone's home. I didn't buy someone's home. I bought a foreclosed property, the same way any buyer at this auction could have. The difference is, I know every crack in that foundation. I paid to patch them. Linda's voice came back, higher now, vibrating. After everything we did for you? What did you do for me? I asked, not yelling, not accusing, just asking, the way you'd ask someone to clarify an invoice. Name one thing, Mom. One. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I'll name some things I did. 312 mortgage payments. 8 years of health insurance for Dad. Utilities every month. Property tax twice a year. $186,000. From the daughter you called a burden at your own Thanksgiving table. The crowd had gone still. Mrs. Oates had her hand over her mouth. Pastor Whelan had taken off his glasses and was holding them at his side. You said I was always a burden, I continued. A burden doesn't pay 312 checks. A burden doesn't have $118,000 in a cashier's check. A burden doesn't build an LLC and buy a house at auction. Garrett lunged. Frank grabbed his arm, faster than I'd seen Frank move in years. Give it back! Garrett was shouting now, pulling against Frank's grip. That's our house. You can't take it. I didn't take it. You lost it. With a forged signature, a fake notary, and $47,000 you spent on a truck and 2 trips to Las Vegas. Garrett stopped pulling. His face went white. Linda screamed. Not words, just sound. Raw, shapeless. The kind of noise you make when every version of the story you've told yourself collapses at the same time. A security guard stepped forward. Mrs. Oates hadn't moved. Pastor Whelan put his glasses back on, slowly, like a man who had just seen something he needed to study more carefully. The noise faded. Linda's scream turned into breathing, hard, ragged, the kind that comes after you've emptied yourself and there's nothing left. The security guard stood between Garrett and the rest of us, one hand up, palm flat. Frank still had Garrett's arm. Garrett had stopped fighting. He was staring at the ground. I pulled a single sheet of paper from my manila envelope. I'd typed it the night before, formatted it the way I'd format a business proposal. Clean, centered, professional. This property will be renovated and converted into a community resource center for women and families in crisis. The facility will offer transitional housing, financial literacy workshops, legal aid referrals, and family counseling services. I looked up from the page. The crowd was watching. Not my family. They'd stopped being my audience a long time ago. I was speaking to Millfield. It will be called the Millfield Family Center. I folded the paper and slid it back into the envelope. This house was never a home to me, but it's going to be a home for people who actually need one. Frank closed his eyes. 2 tears ran down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them. He just stood there with his hand on Garrett's arm and his eyes shut, like a man standing in weather he couldn't get out of. Garrett muttered something I couldn't hear. His voice had gone thin. The bluster was gone, and what was left was just a man in a hoodie on a cold morning, realizing that the thing he'd stolen and the thing he'd lost were part of the same transaction. Mrs. Oates stepped forward from the crowd. I'd like to volunteer. Then Hal Gregg. Then Martha Benton from church. Then a woman I didn't recognize. Later I learned her name was Denise, a mother of 3 who'd left an abusive husband the year before. Linda stood alone. The crowd had shifted. They weren't around her anymore. They were around me. The crowd thinned slowly, the way crowds do when they've witnessed something they'll talk about for years. People shook my hand. A few hugged me. Alan handled the paperwork with the county clerk inside the courthouse. Linda walked to her car without looking back. Garrett followed 10 steps behind, phone to his ear, already calling someone. Frank stayed. He stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps with his hands in his jacket pockets, watching me the way you'd watch a plane take off, knowing it was going somewhere you couldn't follow. I walked over. We faced each other. You bought the house. Yes. To help people. Yes. He nodded. The nod was slow, careful, like something hurt. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Old, yellowed, soft at the creases. Found this in the attic last week. Was going to throw it out before the bank came. He handed it to me. I unfolded it. My math competition certificate from 8th grade. First place, state level. 14 years old. The night nobody celebrated. He'd kept it. I was proud of you, he said. I want you to know that. I looked at the certificate, then at him. Goodbye, Dad. I folded it and slid it into my blazer pocket, the inside one, close to the chest. Then I walked to my car. I didn't look back. In the driver's seat, engine running, hands on the wheel, I thought about what Frank had said on the phone that night. Ask your pride and joy. I'd meant Garrett. But sitting there, with a deed in my name and a certificate in my pocket, I realized the phrase had been wrong. Nobody in that family had ever been my pride, and nobody had ever been my joy. Those were mine now. I put the car in drive. 3 months passed. Spring turned to summer. The legal system did what legal systems do, slowly, procedurally, without passion. Garrett was charged with identity theft and bank fraud by the county district attorney. Allen had also filed a complaint with the U.S. Attorney's Office, but the federal case was deferred in favor of the state prosecution. Garrett took a plea deal, 18 months of probation, a permanent felony on his record, and full restitution to me, $47,000, paid over 5 years through garnished wages from the warehouse job he finally had to take. He loaded pallets at a distribution center outside Lancaster, $12 an hour, no business cards. Darren Holt lost his notary license permanently. The Pennsylvania Department of State revoked it after the bank confirmed the fraudulent notarization. He was fined $5,000 and barred from reapplying. Linda and Frank moved out of 814 Maple Drive 2 weeks after the auction. Linda's sister Carol took them in. Her house in Allentown had a spare bedroom, but Carol asked them to leave after 2 months. Too much drama, she told Frank. They moved into a small one-bedroom rental in Lancaster. Frank got by on disability. Linda took a part-time job at a fabric store, cutting material, working a register. Her first paying job in 26 years. The house on Maple Drive was gutted and rebuilt over the summer. I used $50,000 from the LLC, $40,000 from a community development grant I applied for through the county, and $10,000 from Rita, who wrote a personal check the day I told her the plans were approved. New walls, new floors, new paint, a reception desk in the front room where the Thanksgiving table used to be. 4 transitional housing units upstairs where the bedrooms had been. A meeting room in the basement, Garrett's old space. The Millfield Family Center opened in March. Opening day. I stood in the front room and looked around. The walls were light gray now, not the dark paneling Linda had never let anyone change. The floors were new oak laminate, clean and even. A banner hung above the reception desk. Everyone deserves a place at the table. Mrs. Oates cut the ribbon with a pair of kitchen shears she'd brought from home because nobody had thought to buy ceremonial scissors. Pastor Whelan said a short blessing. Rita took photos on her phone. 47 people had signed up as volunteers. I knew the exact number because I kept a spreadsheet. A young woman named Maria walked in 20 minutes after the ribbon cutting. She had 2 kids, a boy around 4 and a girl around 6. She asked about transitional housing. I sat down with her at the reception desk, pulled out the intake forms and started asking questions. Name, current living situation, number of dependents, emergency contact. The same way I'd fill out a client's tax intake, calm, professional, thorough. But different. This time, the numbers meant shelter. They meant someone sleeping in a bed tonight instead of a car. I glanced at the wall where the family Christmas photo used to hang. 3 smiling faces, never 4. In its place was a framed copy of the center's mission statement, signed by every volunteer. 47 signatures. All real. I learned that the heaviest thing you can carry isn't someone else's mortgage or someone else's pride. It's the belief that you owe your life to people who never once said thank you. That's where my story ends, and where the Millfield Family Center begins. 312 checks. 1 forged signature. A Thanksgiving napkin I folded but never picked back up. If you've ever been the quiet one holding everything together, the one they forgot to thank, you already know what matters. Share this story, leave a comment, and subscribe to Calm Drama Stories.